Hello and welcome to the webinar, Scholarship Application Strategies and Resources. My name is Diana Canoyer and I'm with the National Indian Education Association and your moderator for today. I am honored to introduce our facilitators for today. Cindy Cameron is with the Offices of Federal Student Aid, Carmen Lopez is with College Horizons, and Gabriel Bell is with the American Indian Graduate Center. Cindy Cameron is Lead Communications Analyst within the Awareness and Outreach Office at the Department of Education, Offices of Federal Student Aid. Her responsibility for writing publications, websites, and training school counselors and education staff on federal student aid. Carmen Lopez is a citizen of the Navajo Nation and is the Executive Director of College Horizons, which is a national educational nonprofit that supports the higher education of Native American students by providing pre-college and pre-graduate summer programs open to American Indian and Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian high school and college students from across the nation. And finally, but not least, we have Gabriel Bell. He's with the American Indian Graduate Center, specifically focusing on the Bill and Melinda Gates Millennium Scholarship Program. He is the Campus Engagement Manager for the Gates Millennium Scholars Program based in the American Indian Graduate Center. As Campus Engagement Manager, he provides direct support to Gates Millennium Scholars, linking them to campus resources and support to ensure their academic success. He develops and maintains relationships with college and university higher administrators to secure scholar access to enrichment programs, leadership development, and he creates support networks for these scholars. During today's session, you will hear from each of our facilitators, which will share valuable information. We will provide you the opportunity to ask questions. You can ask questions throughout the webinar, and we will answer the questions at the end of today's session. Please submit your questions using the chat box. If your question is not answered due to time constraints during the presentation, our facilitators will respond to your question via email, which you use to register for the webinar. One final note for today, we are recording the session and we will make a link available on our website within the next 48 hours. Okay, Cindy, let's get started.
Thanks, Diana. First, let's talk about how the federal government can help students pay for college or career school. First, the bad news. We at the Department of Education don't offer scholarships. But before you stop listening to my segment of the webinar, let me tell you what we do have and why it's important to apply. So let's move on to the next slide. Thanks. We at the Department of Education offer 3 types of aid. Grants don't have to be repaid. Work study is earned through a job on or near campus, and loans do have to be repaid with interest. These types of aid that we offer are called federal student aid. Federal student aid covers more than just tuition. It's essentially meant to contribute toward all the expenses of getting an education. Now, it doesn't always cover 100%, but it can make a difference. More information about our aid is at the URL at the bottom of the slide. And that's where you can learn more about how much a student might receive from these various programs. And you can delve into more details at that point. So meanwhile, we're going to move on to the next slide. It's important to apply for federal student aid because not everyone can get a full ride scholarship. Most students do need something extra to help them make up the difference. Also, if you don't apply for federal student aid, you may end up having to borrow money from your bank or, and this is never a good option, live off your credit card to go to school. And even if you apply for federal student aid and are offered only loans, that's still a better deal than getting a private loan. If you want to learn about the differences in federal and private loans, visit the URL at the bottom of the screen. And I just wanted to encapsulate my comments at this point. The upshot is all students should fill out a FAFSA. The FAFSA is a free application for federal student aid, and that's what gives you access to our funds. So on the next slide, we've got information about the FAFSA. Why should I submit a FAFSA if I'm sure I'll just be offered loans? So if you're not convinced yet, consider these points. By filling out the FAFSA, a student is automatically applying for money from his or her state and possibly his or her school as well, because states and a lot of schools use FAFSA information to assess eligibility for their funds. Sometimes schools require a FAFSA before they'll award merit scholarships, so think about that. Also, the FAFSA is used by some scholarship providers besides the states and schools to assess eligibility. So here's an example. We mentioned the Gates Millennium Scholarships a minute ago in relation to Gates' work. The Gates deadline is early in the year, very early in the year, and to get Gates, you must be eligible for a Pell Grant. Now, to determine Pell eligibility, you must fill out a FAFSA. So, no FAFSA, no Gates. Therefore, fill out the FAFSA early. Now, a lot of people ask me, what do I do about filling out the FAFSA if I haven't even done my taxes yet? That my school wants me to fill out the FAFSA. In mid-February, I don't do my taxes until April, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing with Gates. They want my Pell eligibility in January. It's okay to estimate amounts on your FAFSA if your taxes aren't done yet. In fact, the FAFSA asks a question about whether you have done taxes or are going to or are not going to file taxes at all. So that's a really useful tip to know. It's important to get the FAFSA in on time to make sure that all those deadlines are met. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Nancy's telling me I'm a little bit quiet, so we're going to speak up a bit here. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so I said that we at the Department of Education don't offer scholarships, but some other federal agencies do, and here are just a few examples. More examples and other information aimed at the Native community can be found in a 2-page fact sheet at studentaid.gov/native. At that URL, you're going to find this fact sheet that lists tips, ways that Native students can use our resources from federal student aid, and places to look for federal government scholarships, and also for general information about Native education. And I believe that I have links to NIEA and AIGC on there. So yay, shout out to the hosts of the webinar and my fellow participants. All right, so let's move on to, can the government help me find scholarships? Yes, we absolutely can. Even though we don't offer scholarships ourselves at the Department of Education, we actually do try to help students find scholarships because we recognize that the free money is what people want to aim for. So besides the tips in the fact sheet that I just mentioned, we also provide tips on finding scholarships, a list of sources of scholarships, and a link to a free scholarship search at studentaid.gov/scholarships. This page is intended for the general public instead of just, for the Native population. So this is where you'll find a huge variety of possibilities that you might want to explore. Now, moving on to the next slide. What if I have questions about federal student aid? So let's talk about resources for getting help. If we have some students and parents listening in, you should definitely explore studentaid.gov for tons of information about our aid. If you have questions, you can use the Contact Us page to read through the frequently asked questions or to get in touch with us by email or phone. And while you're filling out the FAFSA, you'll find help text for every question, as well as immediate online chat with a customer service representative. And that representative can answer your questions about your application as you're doing it. Then, of course, there's always your high school counselor or other college access mentor and the financial aid staff at the college or career school that you plan to attend. So let's move on to the next slide, where we'll take a quick look at resources that counselors and mentors can use when advising students. Counselors, TRIO people, librarians, tribal scholarship directors, all of you who advise students about financial aid. If you remember one thing I say today, this should be it. financialaidtoolkit.ed.gov. To be clear, this is a site for the counselor or mentor. Students and parents should go to studentaid.gov because they won't find the level of detail they need on the toolkit. The toolkit provides you, the counselor, with very high-level basics about federal student aid and tips and talking points for when you're working with students. Through the toolkit, you can find free training for your professional development. For instance, the webinar that we're doing today was announced on the toolkit. And you can download PowerPoint presentations to use at your college nights. You can also find tips on planning and executing a college night. And the coolest feature of the toolkit is the section that lets you search by type of resource, topic, audience, and what time of year the resource is particularly useful. And you can find and download all types of things. In our search results, you may find handouts, videos, sample tweets that you can use, or Facebook posts, infographics, and much more to aid in your outreach to students. And finally, we know a lot of counselors like to have things to hand out, so you can print out our fact sheets, or you can order from our selection of print publications, and there's information on the toolkit to tell you how to do that. Just one thing I wanted to put in a plug for here, because we do get this question relatively frequently from counselors and financial aid staff. It is okay to take our video and post it on your own site. It's okay to take our handout and put it in your school newsletter. It's okay to tweet out our tweets. Any of that stuff. You can use our materials. Our content is free, and just keep that word in mind, because all of this is okay as long as you don't charge students for the information. Okay. So now that you've seen what benefits the federal government can bring you, let's move on to the meat of the webinar. Let's talk scholarships specifically. I'm going to turn things over to Carmen now, and she'll emphasize yet further how understanding and filling out the FAFSA is crucial to maximizing scholarship funds, and she'll provide some other amazing tips. Carmen?
Thanks, Cindy. Hello, everyone. Excited to talk with you about actual searching for scholarships and applying for scholarships. Financial aid is generally one of the primary issue that students coming into College Horizons or parents reaching out to us are asking help for, is how do I find money to pay for college? And we believe that financial aid should not be a barrier for Native students attending college. So you have to work for this, though, and again, take a lot of the information from this webinar and follow up with questions on it. So we're ready to go. Okay, so the 4 points that I'm going to talk about in my section is the first thing is understanding your expected family contribution. We're going to be throwing a lot of vocabulary at you again on the sites that Cindy pointed to. There's a lot of vocabulary that you need to become comfortable with as we throw it out there. So the EFC, this is a calculation, total cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution will result in unmet need. The EFC is determined through the FAFSA. You need to know your EFC in order to understand what types of scholarships or aid you will be eligible for. So what do you need? Taxes. You can even use a FAFSA forecaster for a 9th grader, a 10th grader, 11th grader. You don't have to be a senior to use the FAFSA forecaster. And again, it helps you to understand the types of aid to apply for. The second thing I'll go over is identifying scholarships to apply to. Native specific or using certain type of search words for minority scholarships, merit-based, field-based, meaning maybe you already know an academic interest or extracurricular interest that you have, and then the different types of search engines that you can use, and then the last couple are also tribal specific scholarships, and then local as well. We often forget about our local banks and our local charities that actually have scholarships that you can apply to. The next point I want to emphasize is getting organized. You have to be organized to alleviate that anxiety, especially as a senior. There's things that you can do fall, winter, spring, and then also for juniors, you can actually start to get ready for the financial aid process starting in your junior spring. Having some type of planner or calendar is critical to stay organized. And then the last piece will be focusing on application tips, in particular the essay sections that you would be focusing on in whatever application you're applying to. Okay, next. So first thing, understanding the EFC. Parents, you are responsible to get your taxes up to date. You have to engage in this. You can't put this off, especially if you have a junior. You need to start to get your taxes up to date. Many people, again, can start to complete the FAFSA forecaster in advance. That gives you an understanding in your junior year, junior spring, senior fall, to start to understand where is my family at in terms of the amount of money that we might have to be responsible to pay for college. The EFC is going to identify the types of aid you might be eligible for and the types of scholarship that you can then apply for. For those students that might be on the bubble, we often use Pell eligibility as the criteria for need-based aid or merit-based aid. And some students might fall really close to that eligibility, and we would say initially for you to always look at need-based aid if you're right on that bubble, just because if certain financial situations might change in your family, you want to make sure you're applying to more scholarships and not limiting yourself. As I mentioned, a lot of times we categorized aid into either need-based aid and merit-based aid, and it's not always either or, and it's not always super clear what this is. The need-based aid is oftentimes based around Pell eligibility, so the more needs you have, the more scholarships might be available for you to cover that type of expense, where merit-based aid can encompass many different things. This could be based upon your academic GPA, this might be national merit awards, this could be geographic, this could be based upon you being an artist or a student that's interested in the sciences. So merit-based can encompass a lot of different types of talents. All students should apply for merit-based aid. So need-based aid students, you don't only apply to need-based aid. You also need to be applying to merit-based aid as well. So don't just put yourself in one category. Yes, you need to be eligible, but you need to cast your web wide in terms of looking for scholarships and then targeting the ones that are the best match. One other thing I want to put in here for some students is the CSS financial aid profile. And this is, in addition to the FAFSA, some colleges, universities, and scholarship programs might require you to also fill out a CSS profile as part of their application process. And this helps them to determine different levels of institutional aid. And this CSS profile is administered through the College Board. And the CSS profile is different because it asks for more detailed financial information than the FAFSA does, and it takes into account other assets that your family might have, such as retirement savings or the types of cars you own or drive, multiple houses, certain business things. So their profile requires additional information. Okay, next. Now, once you have a sense of your EFC and your eligibility for different types of scholarships, then you've got to start to get organized and create a plan. All right, for those of you that are seniors, your fall is stressful. You've got classes, your activities, your volunteering. You've got to focus on your testing. You've got to get your college applications started. You're starting the scholarship searches. On top of it all, you have family and cultural obligations. So this is an intense time to get ready for going into senior fall. You have to have a system to organize yourself, planners and calendars. If you like to use your calendars that are online, your calendar makers on your phone or your computer, go ahead and use that. If a good old-fashioned paper calendar is best for you, then use it. Whatever it is to help keep you organized in your academic, your social, your cultural, and then in your scholarship application and college application, you're doing both of these at the same time sometimes. So the biggest thing is you just need to reduce anxiety and stress by knowing your deadlines and seeing the big picture so that you can prep for it. It's very difficult in this day and age to be able to pull together an application in a couple of days, and it's usually because it requires a letter of recommendation from someone else. So you've got to rely on a counselor or a teacher or someone within the community to provide those letters, and you can't give them 2 days notice for them to pull that together for you. Your part you might do at the last minute, but a recommender definitely needs more time. So you've got to be organized. 11th graders, in your spring, you could start registering right at this time, actually, on listservs, various organizations that we're going to list for you. Start to follow these organizations on Facebook and Twitter. At College Horizons, we are always posting on our public page, and so for those parents or educators that are not on Facebook, just so you know, any public organization page is open to anyone to get on. You don't have to have a Facebook account in order to access public information for Facebook accounts. So for College Horizons, you could go in and see what we post. That's the place where we push out information the quickest from other partner organizations or programs that we'll send out. For those that are 12th graders, the summer before 12th grade, you can start to research your scholarships. So this coming summertime, this is again where after you've started to become familiar with the names of some of these scholarships, you can start to look up their websites, see when their deadlines are for the fall, and start to build out your calendar. Schools and tribal educators, this is where in the spring you can start to hold financial aid workshops and run these FAFSA forecasters for your juniors and for your seniors, so that again over the summer they can start to figure out what scholarships that they can start to target applying for in the fall. So schools and educators can have a role in the springtime right now to prep your next coming class of seniors. 12th grade fall, this is organizing your planner for college applications and scholarship applications. And then again, parents, you need to have your tax information up to date by senior fall, so that when you get ready for that FAFSA to be released, you're on schedule. And again, you can use previous year's tax information, but parents have to get organized in order for the students to understand what their EFC is. Okay, next slide. So identifying scholarships to apply to. Finding quality information and trusted sources is really important, and we're going to list them on the next slide for you. You don't want to just be doing some general Google searches, and again at College Horizons we list out only certain resources on our page that are trusted and that we have relationships with, or that we know from our other educators and counselors that they like to send their students to. Don't limit your searches to Native specific scholarships only. Again, the next slide we're going to show you a couple, but oftentimes we think, oh, I'm only going to apply for scholarships that are for American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian. Yes, you need to start with those, but then you need to go broader. You need to apply to some national scholarships precisely because they don't get many applications from Native students. So when it does come across, you are interesting to them because of your life experience and your worldview. So some of those could be Coke, Google, Best Buy, Walmart, etc. Keyword search is important as well. So when you're looking through some of these databases, you can type in scholarships for minorities, underrepresented, female students. You can also look for scholarships based on geography, the state you're from, the county you're from, the school you're from. Even some alums will give monies to their colleges for students from a certain state or a certain high school. You won't know this, but you'll start to search for these and you'll be able to find it. Others, you might have certain academic interests, talents, music, dance, art, and then you can also look based upon religion and church affiliations, and then also through volunteer organizations that you might be a part of. So expand your keyword search based upon what you are engaged in as a student right now in high school. And then locally, don't forget to look within your own town for local sources of support, like the Lions, the Elks, the Rotary, maybe the bank that your parents are at. They might have a scholarship. Church groups and organizations and local businesses sometimes offer those scholarships. So that's a great way to search within your local newspapers for those types of scholarships locally. Okay? Okay, so here are some of the online search engines that we like to point our students to at College Horizons. We've got FastWeb, I'm First, which is a part of the Center for Student Opportunity. That really focuses on first-generation students, and they actually, through I'm First, they have a scholarship through their own organization based upon the school that you do attend. College Greenlight, Zinch, Big Future, which is through College Board, scholarship.com, meritaid.com, the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation as well. So these are some of the big ones that I would encourage you to take a look at. And again, on the College Horizons website, we list a few more as well that you can take a look at. Now, the important thing is that many of these websites, especially like Zinch, I'm First, College Greenlight, Big Future, they want you to register. And it's okay. These are the times where it's okay to register, create a password, because it will save your profile. And this is where you go in and you click on all sorts of things about yourself. And then the search engine will look for you for scholarships to match you up with based upon your GPA, your ethnicity, your gender. There's different things. So let this search engine do the work for you. And again, it's based upon who you are as a student. Now, Native-specific resources, of course, the Gates Millennium, and then the American Indian Graduate Center. And a lot of people don't realize that there's other non-GMS scholarships that are available for undergraduate and graduate students. So don't just think AIGC is a Gates only. They have a whole other branch of scholarships and fellowships. ACES, the American Indian College Fund, Catching the Dream. There's a great PDF by Dr. Chavers on there of how to secure his tips and advices on how to secure scholarships. The American Indian Education Foundation, the Association of American Indian Affairs, and then you go to your tribes as well. What are their criteria and eligibility? There are Bureau of Indian Ed scholarships. For Hawaiian students, you've got the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and the Hawaii Community Foundation as well. Okay, next. Switching to the essay section, I've just come off of being a reader for the Coca-Cola Scholars, and so got a great taste of this for several days in thinking about the scholarship. And then we're reading files at College Horizons right now, and I know Gates folks have just concluded their read as well. Here's some of the major takeaways when I'm reading essays. First of all, answer the question. Whatever the question on the application is, make sure you are answering what is being asked of you. You need to draft and rewrite and edit and rewrite and edit and rewrite. It shouldn't be a one-shot deal in writing your responses. All of us need to rewrite and proofread. Grammar matters. You need to read out loud, have a friend proofread it. Again, this is where you can have real positive peer interactions if a couple of you as friends are going to sit down to fill out scholarship applications together. But again, again, you've got to give yourself time to put your best foot forward. Be authentic. Don't write what you think I want to hear. We want you to write from your experience. Yes, you're going to have to edit that and refine it, but there's not a magic answer. There's not one answer that we're looking for. We're interested in understanding who you are as a student and who you want to become as a student. So be authentic, and don't try to think about what will please me as a reader. I want to know who you are as a student. Some other tips are: show me, don't tell me. Give an example that demonstrates a value, that demonstrates your leadership, that demonstrates your commitment to community, your commitment to culture. Give an example that shows that. So that's what the show me, don't tell me means, is think about your statement, and then now give me an example that shows you in action doing that thing that represents it. Couple of other things. Be careful about quoting a great leader. Oftentimes there might be references to Gandhi or MLK or Sitting Bull, and in some circumstances it can work. In other ways it's almost detracts, because we don't get to what you're really about until maybe 10 sentences in or 3 paragraphs, and you've wasted a lot of space around that. So if you want to start off with something that's inspiring, as part of your first drafting, do it, because you'll find that later on into your what you're trying to convey, that is what finally comes across. So then you can start to edit out the extraneous information. The second thing to be careful is that oftentimes when we talk about somebody that's inspired us, I say in here, I want to give your grandma a scholarship and not you, because your grandmother is awesome. In your essay, the way you describe what she's done and taught you as a young woman, and the perseverance that they've gone through and the encouragement that they've given you, it's like, I like your grandma, and I like your grandma better than you, because I don't know who you are. You've written to me about what they've done. You can again edit when you start talking about what it is that you've learned from them. What you're then getting to in the next part is about, how has this transformed you? Who have you become as a result of it? How do you think differently, act or behave differently because of that influence? That's what I want to get at, and that's the meat of it. And then remember that scholarships are an investment in a person. So show why this investment in your education will make the world a better place. I'm interested in your dreams. I'm interested in your hopes. I'm interested in who you want to become and how you're going to change the world. And so share a little bit of that about where you want to be with this education. And I think I'm going to, yes, now I'm going to turn the next part over to Gabe Bell with the American Indian Graduate Center, who's going to focus on writing the nomination and recommendation letters. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen, for that. And I also want to thank you, Carmen, for making the distinction, particularly in your previous slide, or a couple slides ago, with regard to the Gates Millennium Scholarship and the American Indian Graduate Center scholarships as separate scholarship programs. So I say that just to also talk about, I'll be sitting in for Melvin Manette, who is the Director of Graduate Fellowships and Special Programs, and I just wanted to take some time in Part 3 to talk about nomination and recommender letters and how important that is to your scholarship applications, your college applications. So with regard to your application itself, many times you're going to be asked to provide a reference letter. We have the 2 words nominator and recommender. At the top, for those of you that are familiar with the Gates Millennium Scholarship Program, we do make a distinction between 2 different types of letters. So with regard to nominator and recommender, these are just different terms to describe essentially the same thing. With the Gates Scholarship, we have a nominator letter that your educator and or your teacher would talk about your academic achievement. Recommender is talking about your community service. That's Gates specific. Again, we're going to be more general in this particular part of the presentation to talk about the recommender letter that your educator, your teacher, whoever is supplying this letter, this is what it is and this is what we're talking about. So in addition to your application, again, you'll be asked to provide some information to somebody that you would like to provide your recommendation letter to the scholarship that you're applying to. Something that's important to do in this, and I'm going to talk in respect to those of you that are going to be providing those recommended letters. So if you are going to be providing a recommendation letter for your student, it's important that you provide full contact information in the online application portion. This allows not only the student to provide a way to contact you as a recommender themselves, but also the scholarship provider. It allows us a way to contact you if we need to. And sometimes, since many of the scholarship applications are online based, you might want to check your junk and your spam mail. Oftentimes communications can get routed in error to those folders. So if you do have a student that you're supplying a letter for, just be cognizant that some communications may be going to these folders. Another helpful tip for writing these letters for your students is, if you don't already have some background information, typically what we advise our students is to find somebody that they feel familiar, they feel comfortable with, they feel that is going to do a good letter for them. And when you're reached out by a student, you might not know the whole background information, you might know the student well, but it's always helpful to have a resume or copies of all letters from the applicant in order to make your recommendation that much better. What this allows you to do is it allows you to look at the resume that your student is providing. You can give them some advisement about that resume, being that they're in high school, going to be graduating. It's possibly going to be their first resume that they are providing, so you can counsel them on some of the things that they lack in regards to their resume elements, as well as just counsel other parts of the content within that resume. Your written recommendation will also be able to fill in some of the blanks with regard to the student and their application. The student's going to do their very best to complete their application process. There may be some gaps that you're able to identify, and in those spaces you have the ability in your recommendation to maybe talk about some of those gaps. I'll give you an example. Sometimes a student may have an academic situation where they may have to have had a leave of absence from school. Maybe they didn't talk about it in the application, but when you're providing that recommendation, you might find it appropriate at that time to kind of talk about that, to credit the student for everything that they went through experience-wise. So you can fill in the blanks in that way. Also, it may be helpful to research the organization or the particular scholarship that the student's applying to kind of also give you a better idea of ways to enhance your recommendation letter for the student, to be more concise about certain aspects that the application process might be looking for, and so that will allow you to hone in on those aspects and maybe flesh out more of those components that the student may possess as far as experience-wise, extracurricular activities, and so forth. One of the other things that we've kind of encountered over the course of time is, as a scholarship provider, we ask students to provide us information, and sometimes there's a privacy issue. As many of you know, FERPA laws protect student privacy. So one thing, as someone providing a recommendation letter, it might be helpful for you to just identify if the student was provided with some sort of FERPA language, so that you can either counsel your student through some of those issues that they may have, if there's a separate document that they need to fill out to allow free flow of communication for the benefit of the student. Just be aware of that, and if you need to further counsel your student, do so. It'll be a benefit to them, and it will make the overall experience that much better. Also, as the writer of the recommended letter, it's and I think Carmen did a really good job at talking about the essay that a student might provide in an application. You as the recommender, or the person writing the recommendation letter, it's also important to understand what exactly you are providing in your letter. What is it that the scholarship application is looking for? Read over all the prompts even before you start the process, so you can have that overall visual of what you're going to be writing into the recommendation letter itself. Again, there's differing questions. You may be asked to talk about different aspects of the student. So as you're aware of that, you can kind of prepare a little bit more for how you want those letters to flow. And let me just say also, again, maybe making a distinction with Gates Millennium Scholars and maybe other scholarship application processes, you might be asked to provide a letter itself. You may also be inside a website where you're asked multiple questions in a website format, so just be mindful of that. Very important that as you're writing the recommendation, I think being thorough is giving credit to the student and giving them the best chance at having a good review. I understand that there's so many times you're being asked by probably multiple students to submit requests for recommendation letters, and it can just, maybe you're in a crunch. One thing that can oftentimes happen is those that are writing these letters will try and rush through it, or they'll be very brief in their description of who their student is, and that actually is putting the student at a disadvantage. So I would encourage you, that those that are going to be writing letters, to really take some time if you can, and even do multiple drafts of what you're going to be providing for your student, so that we understand more about who the student is, what they're bringing to the table, what their experiences are. Sometimes the letters can be supportive, but they can be brief. I think another piece of advice that might be helpful is to write in a way that will set your student apart. So often we're providing recommendation letters for outstanding, high-achieving students, but if we're saying things that are kind of keeping them in the greater pack of the applicants, what you can do is kind of talk to more of those specific experiences, maybe touch on certain aspects of the student that would set them aside and set them apart from their cohort with regard to the applications. And again, fill in the blanks. Again, you want to paint a full picture of your student. If there's a particular instance that you feel is necessary to talk about, feel free to do that, and that way that will allow those that are reviewing your recommendation letter to have a better understanding of that full experience that student had throughout the course of their academics. As well, it may be helpful to also, in your recommendation letter, just to put in a note to the scholarship application college reviewers that your letter is being submitted in anonymity from the student, and that would be helpful there. And then moving on. Once again, you may find that in your experience you'll be providing recommendation letters in an online format, so many scholarship applications will be asking you to upload transcripts, upload documents. Be sure to name those documents appropriate. What oftentimes happens is you'll be submitting a PDF document, a Word document, into a receptacle online that is receiving thousands and thousands of those type of documents. And not knowing exactly what it looks like on the back end, it would be really helpful to be specific on how you title your documents. So make sure you give the appropriate name to them so that they're easily found on the back end. And again, as we always advise students, I think this would be helpful to those of you that will be writing recommendation letters as well, to always keep a saved copy as you're writing your recommendation letter, either in a PDF format, Word format, any electronic format, so that should you get kicked out of a website, for whatever reason, should your computer shut down, you always have the most recent saved document possible, so you can pull it up for easy resubmission. And again, back to the contact information portion. Entering good contact information will allow us as a scholarship provider, as well as colleges, to contact you if we're unable to reach out to the applicant. So crucial sometimes as we're going through a lot of the processes that we need to reach out to somebody. If we can't reach the applicant, we want to reach the parent. If we can't reach the parent, then we have to reach out to the writer of the recommendation letter. So having good contact information is crucial. Again, that way that allows us to be able to have multiple forms of communication with you. We can also continue to correspond with you after the fact, provide you scholarship information that may be relevant for you and the rest of the students that you are serving and the community that you serve, and also gives us the ability to write a thank you if we're able to do so as well. So good contact information is very helpful. Now, you might, of course, know that putting the onus of the application process in with the student is something that we're going to expect from the student, but also as a mentor, as an educator, as someone that's writing a recommendation letter, it's always helpful to follow up with the student to make sure that everything's going as planned, that they're checking in with their application to verify that everything's being submitted appropriately, that they can verify that the actual application is completed, that your recommendation letter has been received. So be persistent with your students for the benefit of their success. And now on to the last slide of my portion. Again, I wanted to reference, you know, Cindy mentioned a number of scholarships that are out there talking about FAFSA, federal aid. Carmen talked about College Horizons, a number of other great source of scholarships, search engines. AIGCS.org is the office that we work out of, the American Indian Graduate Center Scholars.org. And here we have a number of opportunities that you might find beneficial to you, your students, for you as a student, for you as a parent. If you're looking for other opportunities, we have another set of opportunities here, so check it out. We also have a list of other opportunities outside of our organization, but put this into your list of places to look. Post opportunities for our website will also be coming soon. You can check that out at fellowships@aigcs.org if you want to email a question there. But I will yield my time and turn it over back to our hosts.
Thank you everyone for listening, and thank you to our facilitators. I wanted to, since we were talking about scholarships, I wanted to share a scholarship opportunity that the National Indian Education Association, in partnership with Holland and Knight Charitable Foundation, which is a law firm, and the National Museum of the American Indian, is sponsoring. It's an essay contest scholarship. The website is on your screen, and the PowerPoint presentation with the webinar audio will be posted on our website, so you will have this information after the webinar is over. The deadline is April 15th. It's a $2,500 scholarship, and this scholarship opportunity is not just for seniors or those that are about to graduate. It's 9th through 12th grade, so your freshmen, sophomore, juniors can apply for the scholarship and start building their college-going money. They're putting this away for their future college attendance. Again, the deadline is April 15th. This will be a part of the PowerPoint that will be shared on our website. Next slide. And of course, our convention. All of the scholarship information, we often have Cindy Cameron with FAFSA, the Department of Ed, come and talk about again FAFSA and the opportunities, the funding opportunities step by step, walking you through the FAFSA application process. Our convention is in Portland, Oregon, October 14th through the 17th. I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. Again, as a reminder, the webinar, along with the PowerPoint PDF presentation, will be available on NIEA's website within the next 48 hours. So on behalf of NIEA, oh, I forgot about our question and answering session. I apologize. I do have one question that came through, several of them that I would like to pose to Cindy. Does the EFC take differing state costs into effect? For example, Alaska has a very different high cost of living, and EFCs we have seen are unrealistic. Cindy, could you speak to that?
Sure, yeah. We do hear on a pretty regular basis from people that they feel like their EFC is unrealistic for their individual circumstances. We hear that across the board no matter what state they're from. Just to let you know, part of the formula does take into account the state taxes in that state. So yeah, the state does come into it, not to a great extent, but it does take into account what state they live in and are paying taxes in.
Great, thank you. Next question. When you submit the FAFSA with estimates, especially if you know that your taxes in this specific year are going to be vastly different than the previous year, in regards to maybe family death or divorce or the birth of a child? Is it okay to estimate?
Yeah, it's okay to estimate if you are doing your FAFSA before you've done your taxes. I mentioned that briefly before in relation to, making sure that you make the Gates scholarship deadline or other scholarship deadlines that you haven't done your taxes yet. The thing about life changes, the FAFSA asks about that stuff. So if somebody did die since last year, or if you got married since last year, you got divorced, or you had a kid, or even if you're pregnant now, the FAFSA asks about that kind of stuff. So when you fill it out, you just fill it out accurately, and then boom, there you go. So that's not a problem. That's not going to cause any issues for that kind of life change. What generally happens with the life changes is maybe somebody already filled out their FAFSA and then something happens, like a parent dies or whatever. So at that point, it is appropriate to go back in and make corrections to the FAFSA. There are specific circumstances in which it is okay to make corrections to the FAFSA, and there are other circumstances in which it is not okay to make corrections to the FAFSA. And the best advice I can give, because there are so many different if-then, if-then, if-then scenarios, I would recommend that the student talk to the financial aid office at their school.
Okay, thank you. At this time, there were no other questions that were submitted that haven't already been answered. I would like to offer an opportunity for Carmen and Cindy and Gabriel to have any last thoughts, anything you'd like to share as we close up. Cindy?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I would just say everybody needs to do the FAFSA. If you're a student or a parent, get on it. There are a lot of state deadlines coming up on March 1st, California in particular. I know that's a lot of people. So just get on it. Get it done. It's okay to estimate. Just estimate to the best of your ability and then correct it later on. And don't forget that the FAFSA is your doorway to a lot of different types of aid.
Carmen?
Yes, get organized, ask for help, start early, and if you did get off to a late start, don't give up on it. There's potentially aid that is still out there. I would also say the earlier that you can apply for state aid, the better. Sometimes for many of the state institution, it's a set amount of money and it's declining. So it rewards the students that apply earlier than just being on time. So so the earlier the better in terms of the financial aid. So just stick with it. It can be hard, but it also will be rewarding what ends up coming from it.
Thank you. And Gabriel?
Yeah, I would just say sort of in the same vein that, if you're a student considering a parent, reach out to, all the folks that are here, folks that are on the website, aigcs.org. We have staff members that are devoted day in and day out to be counseling students, both prior to getting to college as well as going through college. If there's a question, ask somebody. We're more than welcome to talk about things in great detail, give you the real answer to a lot of those tough questions, and then specific to the Native experience. We have folks that have went through the process as natives at all different types of universities. I'm engaging students at different institutions, so there's a wealth of knowledge if you just reach out and ask and be persistent. I'll leave you with that.
Great. Thank you for the parting words. On behalf of NIEA and our facilitators, Cindy Cameron, Carmen Lopez, and Gabriel Bell, thank you for joining us today.